For you guys who don't know me, my name is Andy Lambete. I am the head of tunecore for Southern Africa, or for Sub-Saharan Africa to be specific. So my job is to ensure that our business as tunecore is growing on the continent, to ensure that we have the right products and services for our artists, and also to be a person for our artists that they can sort of like tap into and just help sort of, grow the presence of African music on the site on the TuneCore around the world. So yeah, I thought for today, what would really be kind of useful, I think, was I was just going to take you guys through maybe some top line thoughts around my thoughts around distribution. Because as TuneCore, that's where our focus is. We live in the world of distribution. So I thought maybe let me start by that, and then I'll take you guys through a kind of a key demo of how our tool works, how it functions, et cetera, and then we can move to questions. Um, like Brother Osman said, I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm gonna try be as short as possible on my side, so I can ask, so you guys can share questions with me if needed, you know. But let me quickly share my screen. Just going to share. Uh, Let me know if you guys can see the screen, right? Allow.
Yes.
So, okay, cool. So this is just a really top line thing, man. I think uh I like to kind of just go over what distribution is and isn't. I think it's really important to kind of talk about distribution because, in my view, if there's two parts that are essential to the music industry as a whole, there's two functions in the music industry. Everything else is secondary to that. It's the creation of the music and the distribution of the music. If those two things aren't happening, then there is no industry. So, everything other than that is kind of secondary in my view. So just thought I kind of just talk through distribution and kind of like how we see distribution and why we exist as TuneCore. So I think we're just going to go to the first three of this presentation. So what is TuneCore? What is distribution? How to distribute? The distribution part is the demo side of this. But I wanted just to start with what TuneCore is, right? So TuneCore functions as a DIY distribution platform. So what that means is that we are a tool that artists can use to get their music distributed onto different platforms and stores, right? Um, the kind of reason why TuneCore exists and what happened, why TuneCore kind of came about, if I want to give you guys a quick history, is that, um, distribution of music has kind of been the cornerstone of the music industry since the beginning. So if you look at like all the way back in the 20s and the 30s, the music industry was started with jukeboxes. So jukeboxes were like, imagine like that's like the Spotify, that's like the CD player back in the day. Jukeboxes would be around different clubs, different bars or whatever, different taverns or whatever. And then it was the distributor's job to make sure that the 45s that were there, the 45s that they created were in those jukeboxes so the music can be played. So distribution is really that key element of having the music onto the player of the music, or essentially where music is being consumed. And that kind of like basic sort of function is the cornerstone of the industry that we have, right? Uh, Over time, what you had, particularly in the 90s towards the end of beginnings of the 2000s, was distribution was really focused on what we would call physical media. So CDs, when they're still a thing, a little bit of cassettes, et cetera, et cetera. And the entire industry was built around that. When there was a transition from physical to digital, there needed to be a way to figure out how to distribute that digital those digital as that digital music. So we went from iTunes, et cetera, to where we are with Spotify. So what TuneCore is, we came about 20 years ago in that kind of pre-Spotify era, where we were looking at how help independent artists that don't really have record labels or distributors like they are traditionally, to get the music onto this platform so they can have their music bought and sold, right? We've This is a bit of an old presentation. I'm actually reading this thing now. This thing is actually a little bit old, but where we've been able to position ourselves as a business is that 15 years ago we started, 20 years ago we started in the US. We've expanded now globally. There's a me all over the world. We've been able to generate about close to 4.5 to 5 billion USD in revenue for artists. So that's the money that goes directly to the artist's pockets. That's not the money that we touch. Our model is that you sign up. It's a subscription model. You get to have full control of your music on that platform, right? Um, we work with like a range of different artists. I mean, this is just a flash of artists that we've worked with. Again, this is a very old presentation, so it's all changed. But the idea is that we want to be able to help an artist at the beginning of the career and an artist at the peak of the career kind of have the tools so they can just make sure that the music is distributed effectively. They're earning the money that they need to earn, and that money goes directly to them, right? So I'll give you an example. I think we are our two biggest genres on our platform. This is something I learned quite recently, would be hip hop and gospel. On the continent, we have, I would say, arguably some of the most commercially successful gospel artists using our platform. We have a lot of legacy music, some guys that have started their careers um, uh, for in a hip hop perspective, started through tunecore. Kulichana is a very good example of a legacy tunecore act that came through legacy hip hop act that came through tunecore. So the whole idea is that it doesn't matter where you are in your career, we're supposed to be function as a tool that you can use to get your music out there. So I kind of give a very top line perspective on what distribution is, but I think distribution in this era is really about understanding these platforms, right, that we have for streaming, it's where people find music. So we live in a world of subscriptions, and how music now functions, as you guys are more aware than I am, is that to access music these days, you access it through these subscription services and models. You've got Spotify, you've got Apple Music, you've got Tidal, you've got Amazon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you've also got social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok that have libraries of music that people can use for whatever purposes they want to, right? So music distribution in this days is acting as the intermediary between the artist and these platforms and making sure that that music is on those platforms, right? And this is kind of important, man, because there are key functions in the industry that need to happen for an artist, right? So, firstly, to make sure that you're having your distribution correct, that's how you earn money from your recorded music. There is actually no real other way to earn money from your recorded music, from the recorded music itself. Obviously, performance, live fees, merchandising, everything, etc. That exists around your recorded music, right? But the function is essentially to really be making sure that the music's there on the recorded side, the recorded music's on the platform side, so you can actually earn money from it as well, right? It's also a way to protect your art. So a big issue in the music industry overall is this idea of IP theft and copyright issues, right? Having your music distributed through the right platforms protects your music from being stolen or being copyrighted in any way, because there are systems in place that connect the music that you distribute to you, the artist. So it is a key way to make sure your music is protected. Another way is that you can grow your career, right? The real interesting thing of the world that we live in terms of the streaming world as opposed to the physical world, is that not only do you have like access to millions and millions of tracks, the fact that your music in Saudi can be listened to by somebody in the US is kind of in an easy way, is kind of like an amazing thing. So you can start building audiences outside of exactly where you are. And that's kind of the amazing thing about distribution, that is actually building global careers. We've seen it with Afrobeat, we've seen it with Amapiano now. The streaming platforms played a really big role in helping those kind of like musics grow commercially overseas, right? And what's really interesting, I think, for another part is that having distribution in place is also where you're allowed to put almost the science to music to it, right? Because of that, you get to look at like trends, analytics, sales data, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually start planning strategically where your music should live and how your music should live. So when I say distribution is like essential to the music industry and its function, it's like for me, the cornerstone. You don't have an industry without distribution. And I think for me, one thing I just want to point out is that like distribution is so important. And I think the understanding of distribution for me is really going back to this. Distribution is about having your music being able to be sold and bought and sold commercially. Like abofagaza.com, putting your stuff on WhatsApp, that's not distribution. That's just sharing your music. Your music is about making it a commercially viable product that can be sort of like bought and sold, etc. And you can build a career out of it, right? All right, cool. I think for this section, I'm just going to go straight into our back end. I want to show you guys how we work, what our back end looks like, and then also just show you how you distribute so you kind of get a basic idea, right? Let me go. Yeah, let me start here. So on TuneCore, every person that signs up, you'll get access to a backend dashboard. The dashboard is where all the information that pertains to your music lives, right? Uh, the section on the top is kind of the key information. So it's like all your releases, everything you've ever released will be here. So this is your discography. Money and analytics. Here is where you get to look at how well your music is doing, what trends, what analytics can you pull up, where you've been playlisted, etc. And then you can also look at publishing, which is a separate TuneCode product. But essentially, if you need publishing, you can also add it there. But we want to talk about publishing now. We can ask it in the Q&A, right? What we do as TuneCode is we try to be one home for all of your distribution needs, right? So you can master your tracks via TuneCore if you need to. You can also attach all your different profiles, your channel profiles to your TuneCore account to make sure that all the revenue that you're making comes directly back to your TuneCore account. So you can attach your Spotify for Artists, which is a key tool, your Apple Music for Artists, which is a key tool, and your YouTube official artist channel here, right? And that's pretty much what the backend looks like. Um, I'm just going to go to a client's backend to show you what it looks like in practice, right? So this is one of our clients is a brand that we work with. They've released a couple of albums through us. Um, and what it is that with the albums have been able to exist. This is where they've got all the albums, you can access them. This is kind of like a discography. So if you imagine you can sit on Spotify and Apple, we can see the list of all the music that you've been released. It's the same concept. Everything they've released is back here. So it's like a library of your music. Here you can make edits to your music. You can change your music. Whatever you need to do will happen in your discography section, right? On the money and analytics side, here you get to see what's happening from an account perspective, how much money you've earned from different accounts. We've got a kind of dope view of what that looks like, which is this trend and analytics dashboard, where you can see everything that's happened with your music financially, commercially, since you start releasing. So when you look at the top, you've got your lifetime sales. How much money have you made since the account started? What does that mean in streams? Um, and I won't get into TuneCore Accelerator just yet, but essentially you can see how your music is doing over time. So this is the stream journey over the past couple of days for all the music that's under this brand account. You get to see where your audience is at. You get to see where your music is being consumed, right? So you can see here that this account, the music is coming mainly from SA. Nigeria's got a bit of a following, United States and Malawi. Artists love this backend tool because it helps them decide like how do they do tours and stuff. So let's say I've had many artists for who are like, yo, I wanted to build a tour, but I realized that I was trying to build a tour in the UK where my audience is actually in the US, and they've pivoted and done that, you know? You can see what kind of tracks are doing well. You can see like it goes up and down. It seems like, yo, these guys haven't released in a while. The music is kind of changing. And then here you can also see which on a TikTok level, who is using your music for user-generated content, right? So how many people have created different posts with your music? How many times have those have been viewed? How many times they've been liked, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of a way to sort of track if there's like virality happening with your music. Is there something interesting happening in your music? So really, this top line view is ready for me to show you guys like, yo, this is how with TuneCore, you can have full control of what's happening in your career because you get so much information at your disposal and all the money that you're earning comes directly back to you. So I'll wait for the question section if you guys want me to deep dive more because it can get crazy deep. But then let me just show you guys how you kind of release music. So I'm just going to go back to my account here. I am in no way a musician, you know, so I have not released a single thing, but just to kind of show you the process of how it works, right? In the distribution side, there's kind of three key things that you will need always to make sure that your music will get A, approved and will be put into the stores. You're gonna have to have the best mastered version of your music. Like MP3s are cool, but really getting the best quality music, like quality sound of your music is essential. The main reason being is that all these streaming platforms, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, they have a tendency of compressing your music so it doesn't sound as good as you'd want it to sound on the other end. If you guys listen to, I think you must, if take the time to do this exercise, try listen to like earliest piano tracks that kind of came out before the past 3 or 4 years. A lot of those tracks sound pretty bad on Spotify because they weren't mastered to the right level and then were compressed again once they hit Spotify. So the quality of that sound isn't as great as it should be. So that's number one. Number two is that you need to have your label copy, your metadata, what we call metadata, all the information about your track. You need to have that down to a T. Who worked on the track, who performed on the track, who is the engineer, who is the producer. That kind of information is essential because it is essentially like how we figure out and archive the music on all the platforms, you know? So having that information down to a T is really important. And then number three, it sounds simple, but having your artwork in the right format and having the right artwork. Artwork is something that people think is a secondary part of this music industry, but artwork is super important because that's essentially like the visual statement of your music. And people are generally, and it's such a plays a huge part on the Spotify's and the Apple Music because their platforms, although they're audio platforms, they're built to be understood by your eyes, if that makes sense, right? That's why when you look on Spotify and everything, you're following everything in your eyes. So you need to be able to capture a listener's attention with your artwork, et cetera, et cetera. So on that, I'm just going to go through the process. So to start a release, you go to add release, which is on the top side. You can choose what you want to do. It's a single or an album. Let's just go single for this exercise, for this demo. Everything that we do is set up in a way that to make sure that the steps are easy for you to understand and follow, and you make sure that you're ticking all the right boxes. So we start from the top. It's all about giving the track a name. So we need to give the track a name. Let's call it Culture for now. Once you do that, we have to identify who the main artist for this is going to be. So we worked with Chase Williams, who's an upcoming genius rapper that we worked with last year. I'm just not going to use this name. Let's just use my name. We're going to put that name through. You add the main artist. This is essentially, to be clear, the main artist is who is the artist that this song essentially is, who is the representative of the song. So it may not be the owner of the song. It's a difference to a feature, etc. But like it's a person that is going to be front and center of this track. Let's just say we add Andile. If you don't have a Spotify profile, we will create one for you. So in my case, I don't have one. Sorry, let me just quickly just see what's happening here. Yeah, just say add a new artist. I don't have new music on Spotify. They will create a profile for me. If you do, which I'll show you now, it will just link it back to you. I don't have an Apple one, they can create one for me. Let's just say we use 25K for an example, right? 25K does have a Spotify profile. We just say yes. The algorithms in the background will find the latest release from 25K and pick that, and then that's how they will connect it to. So now Culture, the track, will go directly to 25K's Apple Spotify profile and Apple profile. But I don't want 25K to have fake tracks on his thing. So let's just use me. Create new profile. That's a step. You can add other main artists, but you always have to make sure there's a key difference between who your main artists are and who your feature artists are. Because when it shows up on the back end of Spotify and Apple Music, having that difference is important, right? So I'll give you an example. A lot of the times there will be tracks that will have maybe 3 main artists or 4 main artists. Spotify's back end will change that release to a various artist release because there's too many main artists. But if it's just one artist, main artist, and many feature artists, then it will go onto that profile. So it will go to like, for example, if it was 25K, it'll go to 25K profile. So always try to make sure that you understand the difference between your main artist and your feature artist. And then language is all just a click down process of understanding what kind of music you're doing. So what's the language of the music? They say English. Let's say it's Afro pop. It's the genre, primary genre. Is there a secondary genre? We're gonna say, yo, it's like a high life track. Really helping the system understand where this music should be placed and where it could exist if it were to get playlisted. Release dates are key. So a general rule of thumb when it comes to distribution, right, is always try to distribute your track 4 weeks before the actual release date. So the main reason why is that there will be, because this is a technical process, there will be issues that sometimes arise no matter what. 4 weeks gives you enough time to fix those issues. But also, if you want a track to get playlisted or you want that opportunity to get playlisting, 4 weeks allows the DSP editors to find your track, to listen to your track, to find the right place for your track. So we generally say try to do it 4 weeks ahead of time. And like I think there's a tendency amongst artists, particularly artists that we work with, who are like, yo, um, but I need to get my track out tomorrow. I made the announcement. There's no need to announce the release date of your track if your track is not ready. You know what I mean? Like there's no need to do that. Because you are in control of when your music needs to be released. And it's just always a thing of making sure that you've got your music in 4 weeks ahead. You get to choose whether the track is previously released or not. What tends to happen is a lot of people can use our platform to hold catalogs, so tracks that they released before. So you can, if it's previously released, we can add the information of all of that. And then on our professional tier, you get to add stuff like a label name. So for all the guys that are starting record labels, this is a really good opportunity to actually have what we call the PNC lines, that the line at the bottom of all music, where it says like distributed by or like licensed to Sony Music, etc. This can be where you can add that. So we're just gonna go say save. All right. So now we're on the second section. Now we've got the basic information around the track. We've got Couch is the name, Andile is the artist. The release date is the 31st of July. The label is Andile. That's like, that's the label we signed it. I'm sure you guys know about ISSC codes, but this is just something that is essential to know about it. It's a really important thing. An ISSC code is the fingerprint of your track. ISSC codes, it's one track will get one ISSC code essentially. That is how we track streams. That's how we track everything. We track it to this ISSC code. It is fundamental to have that and know what your ISSC codes for a track. On TuneCore, once you set up a track, we will give you an ISSC code anyway. So you will always get that. But you can also get one. You can get a localized RSSC code from the likes of Sampro, etc. So if your track's been played on radio, if it's been played on Spotify, the ISSC code is what is being tracked to make sure you're earning your money. Here is the digital stores. So we released to 150 stores. And on this section, you can literally go in and choose which stores you want the tracks on. Usually we advise you to have it on all of them, but sometimes artists don't want to have it on, let's say like Pandora, for instance, So you get full control of where you want to get your music delivered to. Our only thing is that we don't deliver directly to Mdundo and AudioMac. Those would have to be direct submissions to those platforms. When we look at social platforms essentially what we call, they're social media platforms where music exists. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Meta, etc. So on those platforms is when you want to access your music on a live beat, this is where you find it. For artists that want to use Beatport, we also have a Beatport section which you can click and you can get your music onto Beatport. All right. So when I was talking earlier about the label copy, the metadata, this is where you get to fill all those pieces in. So each section is just a question around who actually helped make this track. So the songwriter for this instance, we can also just say is Andile, right? You can add as many songwriters as you need. I am the main artist here, but let's just say we needed to add a feature artist, 25K again. You can add 25K's name and have him as a feature artist, uh, and they will be come up as a feature. Forming artists, again, is really more about who actually, so this top section, just so for clarity, is who actually helped create the track from the writing to, production perspective. Performing tracks is who actually performs the song. So if 25K is on the track as a rapper, there he is, and we can say what he added to the track was the vocals. And you can do this for all the way through just to kind of make sure that all the label copy is correct. And then who are the producers and the engineers, right? This is again just to make sure that people know who actually helped create this track. I'm just gonna say Andile was a creative who did this, and he was the mixing engineer. All these questions are kind of really kind of important so we understand what's happened with the song. Copyright ownership is just to make sure that do you have rights to this track? Is this track a cover? Do you have the license for this cover, etc.? We were going to say no. And then any additional information is like, is it an instrumental track? Does it have no lyrics? That just makes sure that they know where to place that. They won't place it on any vocal playlist, etc. Here you say no again. Does it have an explicit version of this track? Yes or no, it doesn't matter. But usually try make if you have swearing, always just make sure you say explicit. They just don't want to put tracks on playlists where they know young people are going to be listening to them. You say no, you can add your lyrics and you say save. So you'll see it's kind of a straightforward process. It's just all you're doing is answering question by question by question. Once you've saved, you can add your audio. You just pick up your audio from wherever you've got it on your desktop, and then you add your artwork. Artwork has to be in a very specific kind of format, pixels format. And this is because, again, all of these platforms are very visual. So you've got to make sure that you're fitting up the visual, meeting those visual standards that they're looking for. And then you can also make your own artwork if you need that as well, right? And then we just say save and continue. And then once you've ticked all these things, you'll see it here. These tick boxes on the right here. Once you've ticked all of these, you can go to the store and release your track. We can't do it because I haven't finished the whole process. But that's kind of just that's the setup on via TuneCore's backend. Some key things as well is that once you have a TuneCore account, you can release as many times as you want within a year, right? So our subscription is 1 year. But within 1 year, you can release hundreds of tracks if you want to, because that's part of what your account is, right? So that's how it kind of works. I think one thing I just wanted to show you guys is maybe just what our different tiers look like. So let me just go to let's go pricing. So we've got 3 key tiers that you can look at as an artist, right? We've got the professional tier. This is like the best tool, I think, because it gives you everything that you need. Professional tier is like you've got the technical support side. You can create your own label names. You can get access to workshops and stuff. That's kind of the best version. And then we've got other tiers, which is the breakout tier. This is for artists, in my view, that have like a bit of a career, but maybe on like album number 2 or like album number 3, they're still kind of building and they don't have a lot of content to manage. And then we've got a rising tier, which is really for artists who are at the beginning of the career. So it really depends on where you feel you're at, and what you're willing to, but it also depends on what you're willing to invest into your career. All right, I think I've spoken way too much. I'm gonna leave it to the floor. And yeah, I'm happy to hear from you guys if you've got any questions.